What's up, YouTube? How you doing? As you can see, I am not Uncle Mike. I am here filling in for him while he is away in the Philippines, helping people over there on the other side of the world. I'm just saying VB, aka Steph, for those who know me, and we're gonna go ahead and get into these next videos and some reactions to those. All right, so just sit back, enjoy. This next one is breaking female pedo exposed at O.U.R. So we're gonna check this out and see what they have to say. All right, guys, let's get into it.
Number of women who have allegations against Tim Ballard is, I just thought we couldn't beat Joseph Smith's record, but wow.
I've been suspicious of cover up by the Utah media, not doing their job, investigating these things, and this absolutely confirms it to me.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Timmy Did What podcast. I am Kara Burrell, joined by my co-host, Ryan Fisher.
Hi, how's it going?
Today, we are going to be going to a very dark subject, a very gnarly episode, some webs that have been weaved, and we are going to take you through them. This stuff is not on mainstream news right now. We're going to be connecting some pieces about Tim Ballard, the hero behind the Sound of Freedom movie, founder of Operation Underground Railroad, alleged abuser of many, many women, and his connections with Paul Hutchinson, longtime backer of O.U.R, executive producer on the Sound of Freedom movie, ex-spouse to a woman who, as it was just reported in KSL a couple of days ago, Paul Hutchinson's ex-wife at the time when she worked for O.U.R, she has just been convicted and sentenced for being got a lot of trigger warnings right off the bat. The attorneys for the women, Alan Mortensen, what he's calling right now, revealing to be a den of pedophiles. Those are his words. So this is just one piece of what we're allowed to share and what we can share about the kind of operations that O.U.R was running, the type of people that they hung out with, and this new story that just came out about this woman, Rosio, who is Paul Hutchinson's ex-wife, what kind of crimes that she has been up to, what O.U.R, what Tim Ballard knew about, what Paul Hutchinson knew about. We're going to break it all down for you. If you don't know already, this is a podcast that I do on my YouTube.
Yes, definitely. Trigger warning for anyone that's coming in. So just be mindful that you may be triggered by the content of this video that's coming in right now. For those who do not know Tim Ballard and O.U.R, if you do know, please put in the comments, because I am learning something as well. I did hear of the Sound of Freedom movie, and it was supposed to be really a great movie. So now that we're hearing about someone that's associated with it is part of a PDF den, that's sounding a little bit troubling. So let's get into it, see what's going on. If anybody knows anything more about this and what O.U.R is and exactly Tim Ballard, please put that in the comments.
Channel here, Kara Burrell, the Timmy Did What podcast, available everywhere. And if you want to support the stories that we're telling, which are very, how would you say, Ryan, dangerous, and we have to figure out how to say our words very carefully so we don't get in trouble or get sued. So if you'd like to support this podcast, please follow us on Patreon, where we will have even more updates about this ongoing Tim Ballard saga. So Ryan, tell us about the latest updates with the case. I know you went to part of this trial, so let people know where we're at. Where does it stand right now in the middle of January 2025?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks to everybody for your patience in getting this update out. A lot's happened in the last month, and we're going to update you with everything right now. But I have to acknowledge that some of the subjects we're talking about today are going to be depressing, hard. It's confirming what we've already known, but it still makes it hard and to listen to that there's people out there doing horrible things to kids. But before we get into that, I'm going to give you a quick update on what just happened on the end of December. 2024 was closed out with a hearing for Celeste Borys, in which she was being charged and accused by O.U.R. of stealing company documents, of stealing private, personal, or private company sensitive information. And O.U.R. was trying to get her silence, get the documentation that she has brought forth that illuminates the crimes or the backstory, or how would I put it, what Tim's been up to this whole time and what the board of O.U.R. and the company has been up to. She has a treasure trove of documents and information to illuminate and back up all of her claims against Tim for his cult-like sexual assault, alleged sexual assault encounters with her and other women. And O.U.R. has moved to try and get those documents and all that information out of the court, keep it buried, keep it hidden. They've even gone so far as to claim that her cell phone, her personal cell phone that she bought and plan that she set up herself, is company property because O.U.R. paid for some of her cell phone expenses as she traveled. So they are in.
Okay, so just an update from what I've gotten over here from the side chat. Tim Ballard is the one that made the movie Sound of Freedom, which was, if I'm not mistaken, because I haven't seen it, a movie about two children that were transported, and a father that was going to find them, and how his journey in going to find them. And O.U.R. is Operation Underground Railroad, and they help kids that have been transported. So we're saying transported, but the real word starts with a TR. But right now YouTube doesn't allow us to say the actual word, so we use the word transported. So just an update on that.
Full-on cover-up mode. And I think the best way to describe what this hearing was about is something that Kira Lynch, one of the women who has accused him of sexual assault, posted on Instagram recently, which reads, O.U.R. rescued and Tim Ballard. You are all complicit in an appalling and unforgivable betrayal. Instead of helping to restore the life of a woman you helped traffic, a woman who was raped and sexually abused by Tim Ballard and others, as you well know, you are suing her. Rather than taking accountability for the irreparable harm you caused, rather than supporting and rehabilitating those whose lives you knowingly destroyed, you have chosen to silence and punish them further. Your actions are a grotesque demonstration of deceit and cowardice. When someone is raped or sexually abused, their autonomy is violently and cruelly stripped away. Yet you, faced with undeniable evidence, have done nothing to provide justice or restitution. I hope the truth of your lies, your corruption, and your complicity is expressed in court for all to see, and I hope you are held accountable for every ounce of the pain and devastation you have inflicted. The organization is vile beyond words, and your refusal to take responsibility is a stain on everything you claim to stand for. You keep posting, asking for more donor money. You keep showcasing so-called rescues. You keep calling for volunteers. But why would anybody want to volunteer for your organization when this is how you treat someone who started as a volunteer with O.U.R. and worked alongside Tim Ballard himself? Celeste Borys, a former ally, will be in court on December 30th and 31st, defending herself against a lawsuit brought by O.U.R. Rescue and Tim Ballard. Well said. This is an organization that has that self-proclaims to be a defender of women and children. And a woman has come forward claiming sexual assault against Tim Ballard, not just one, but 7 and a lot more. And they are attacking her and suing her and trying to do everything they can to discredit her and have their lawyers in court discrediting her, demeaning her, calling into question her testimony, calling her a liar, and defending the perpetrator in this case as alleged against Tim Ballard. And so, like, the hypocrisy is pretty disgusting. And so that hearing happened on December 30th, 31st. I was there. I was able to be there in support of the women. Most of the original 7 women that can make it were there also, and they had to face Tim for the first time in person at this court appearance. And there's a lot more I want to tell. We got some more stories that I can share with you about how that went down. And I think we're going to probably do another separate video on Patreon for you that are interested in supporting the channel and want to learn more about that. But I'll just summarize it by saying that Celeste faced Tim. She faced all these horrific accusations and demeaning attacks on her character, on her testimony, all over again. I mean, it's just re-victimizing the victim. And this is a suit brought by O.U.R and their lawyers. And Tim Ballard,
O.U.R,
and his
this
lawyer.
is Tammy. Tammy out of Minnesota now is the one who's in charge of O.U.R. So it's the O.U.R rescue operations that has nothing to do with Tim, but they are still, from what we can understand, funneling money for legal defense to Tim Ballard as an individual, and then also still beating these women up with these claims that they did nothing wrong and that Tim Ballard is not a perpetrator of any kind. So O.U.R is, when given the choice, they're still sticking with Tim Ballard's word over actual victims right now.
And I mean, if you just take a step back and you look at this whole accusations, all the accusations against Celeste, trying to get this information suppressed. I mean, it tells you who's trying to suppress and cover up information. It's Tim and O.U.R. Like, that just says everything to me. Like, if they had the truth, if the truth was on their side, then they would encourage all the documentation, all the investigations, all of the testimonies to come forward. But they are trying to get it suppressed. And if you still had, I mean, we have to just remind folks again that Tim was fired from O.U.R after their own internal investigation. They had their own internal investigation and saw that there was no way forward for him to continue with O.U.R. That wasn't a bad route. And so he was fired. The internal investigation was kept silent. Celeste has provided some of the documentation about that internal investigation, including her own testimony.
So he was fired from the company that is now still supporting him financially in this legal battle against these women that have said that they have been abused, violated, or transported by him. That's kind of strange. And they're saying that there was no way they could move forward in any sense with him. Like, what did you do to where not only did you lose your job, but there was no reconcilable way to move forward? Like, there was no way to work anything out. I mean, to me, it seems like it had to be something pretty serious if they said there's no way for us to come to an agreement or anything like that. So just interesting. Let's keep going with this.
All that comes out, the whole world will know what O.U.R knows, and they're going to look even worse than they do today. That's my prediction. It's going to be, it's going to be bad.
Even worse than they do today. And you guys, please go check out the link below to go sign up for our Patreon. That would mean a lot. And Ryan has literally the most fantastic stories that will just have you like cheering and applauding at just the bravery of these women and what they had to go through. And now, but the topic that came into our laps lately, a den of pedophiles is what O.U.R was running. And we have a lot of stories in the future that we could also tell why there are so many people within O.U.R, current and formerly, that we have been led to believe through evidence add to the enslavement of children, the abuse of children, of women and children, and not to the saving of them. This is just one of them. This is just one to show you these are the type of people that were working at O.U.R. These were their main backers. These were the main families that Tim Ballard surrounded himself with. And in the words, again, of Alan Mortensen, a den of pedophiles. So we're going to start by talking about Paul Hutchinson, his connections with O.U.R, Tim Ballard, and Paul's second wife.
Hopefully everybody's in a good mental health space for hearing some hard facts about what's going on and the people that Tim surrounded with. But we have some really, really awesome, encouraging news that I haven't even told Kara about yet, about some stuff that I was told just recently in a phone call that is super awesome, encouraging. We're going to end on a good note. So if you stick with us through the hard, we'll leave you with some really encouraging, hopeful, optimistic news at the end.
Yes, especially some news that Ryan has not even told me that I'm really excited to hear at the end. So we'll be finding out at the same time. All right. So the rabbit hole begins with this headline out of KSL News from January 10th that says, mother sentenced to prison for sexual abuse of her child's 14-year-old friend. Wow. Okay. Who is that? If you look at this tweet from Alan Mortensen, the attorney that represents the women against Tim Ballard and O.U.R, he describes that she is Paul Hutchinson's wife. Ironically, the little girl who was abused in The Sound of Freedom was named Rosio after her. So the true Rosio is a pedophile. Can't make this crap up.
You wouldn't know that from reading the article. That's this pisses me off so bad because the article talks about
what we're here for.
Rando Sandy woman that did these horrible things to these kids, and they completely omit the fact of who this person is, the awards and the O.U.R connections, the connections to Tim, the connections to Paul, all of that. None of that is in the article. Like I've been suspicious of cover up by the Utah media, not doing their job, investigating these things. And this absolutely confirms it to me that they don't, they don't connect the dots for this rando Sandy woman that actually has O.U.R connections and is supposed to be a vigilante for protection of women and children through O.U.R and her husband, Paul Hutchinson. So you have to come here. Like, I don't want to be talking about this, but if the mainstream media is not going to state the obvious, then here we are. I guess we have to do it. And we have to wade through this filth of a life of what these people are to get you the truth and hold them accountable. So that's my rant on the media. Sorry. Take it away.
The vacuum that they would not fill, that's where the Timmy Did What podcast will come in. And we'll talk about it. We'll talk about everything that they don't want to talk about. I think out of any podcast that I've made that we've probably released, this is the one that is going to make the subjects of which we're talking about the most upset. And I wish I was full screen just for a second to say this directly into the camera. Like God's children not for sale. The Timmy Did What podcast is not for sale to anyone who wants to shut us up and tell us not to talk about this stuff. So this is the stuff that I think Paul Hutchinson would probably pay me to not say, but well, now I'm riled up. So Alan Mortensen goes on to say, can't make this crap up. O.U.R and Tim Ballard ran a den of pedophiles. Thank you, Sean Reyes. Piece of shit. And then he talks about how the O.U.R tried to sue him for making this post, this tweet. Okay. And then he just fired away with some other stuff. So this is a picture of Paul Hutchinson with his second wife, Rosio, the one we were really talking about today. And the caption says, the Human Rights Hero Awards 2015 presented by Marisol Nichols, Foundation for Slavery-Free World and Youth of Human Rights International.
Being recognized as examples from society of people we should put on a pedestal for worshiping in some way, shape, or form, that they are these amazing people involved in anti-human trafficking efforts. And the truth couldn't be further from those facts, as is The Sound of Freedom. This is Sound of Freedom movie. The real life story of these people couldn't be further from what's presented.
Exactly. So this is some where things that Alan posted on Twitter, taking from Rosio Smith's LinkedIn page that she lists that she used to work and has experience at O.U.R Rescue or Operation Underground Railroad. And then this is another picture of a lot of the main movers and shakers that helped get Sound of Freedom its accolades and get it off the ground. In the back, you can see in the white shirt, that's in the white dress, that's Rosio next to her husband, Paul Hutchinson. Up front is Tim Ballard and his wife, Catherine Ballard. In the far back, that's Attorney General of Utah, Sean Reyes. All right, we're going to read part of this article. You're already going to say, okay, this is disgusting, this is enraging, but I don't think you're going to understand the twist that we're about to bring at you on top of the twist that already is, hey, this person and her husband worked for a anti-sex trafficking organization for a long time. Besides that, that's already the obvious irony of it all. we're going to give you some twists that I personally did not see coming either. So it says Rosio Isabel Smith, 45, of Sandy was convicted by a jury on November 8th of 2 counts of forcible sex abuse, a second-degree felony, and sentenced on January 3rd to 2 prison terms, one of 15 years. So what happened, according to the statement, in October 2021, a 14-year-old was at her home and she touched him under his shirt, even when he told her he was only 14. It said she locked the teenager in a dark room with her and tried to take his belt off, punching him in the chest when he told her no. Later during that same visit, the statement says the woman sat on the couch next to the 14-year-old, putting a blanket over them and dug her nails into his arm to keep the teenager from taking the blanket off. Then, according to the statement, the woman unbuckled the teen's belt and attempted to unzip his pants. After the teen stopped her, the woman touched him over his clothes and made him touch her as well. She was charged in August of 2022 and was released from custody.
Yeah, what sticks out to me in that horrific account, which I'm so sorry that 14-year-old boy had to go through that. What sticks out to me is it sounds to me like somebody that this wasn't her first rodeo. This wasn't her first time doing this. And I mean, I can't say for sure that. I'm just speculating at this point, but it's very premeditated, taking a boy into a locked room and making very aggressive advances on him. And how old is Rosio? Do we know?
I just gotta say, what is wrong with these people? Like, they really are sickos. Like, sickos, weirdos, wackos, whatever you want to call them. They're all the O's that you could possibly get together because, dude, there's nothing about a little boy or a little girl, teenage boy or teenage girl that... I digress. You know what? I don't understand sicko. I don't speak that language. We'll just keep going because this is already starting to irritate me. I don't get it. I just don't get it.
Older.
45.
Yeah, 45.
So Rosio is 45 years old at the time that this occurred, a couple years younger. But yeah, it doesn't seem like it's her first rodeo. Pin in that, you guys. Quite literally, the very beginning through most of the career of O.U.R., Paul Hutchinson was the main player. If there was a triangle, if there was a trifecta of power, you could say, between getting this narrative across and making a lot of money with these nonprofits and doing all kinds of shady business, that triangle would include Tim Ballard, Paul Hutchinson, and Sean Reyes. I cannot overstate how much Paul Hutchinson was involved in O.U.R.
And in the Sound of Freedom movie, he was primarily responsible for fundraising for the Sound of Freedom movie, for getting that project off the ground. I mean, I believe he, along with several others, were investors in that movie and are making money off of that movie. So he's heavily tied. I would say that from what I've been told, it might not have even gotten off the ground without Paul Hutchinson involvement in getting Sound of Freedom off the ground and funded. And I've been told other things about taking O.U.R. resources, allegedly, to promote the film. And that was done by Tim and Paul.
Taking resources that people donated in to please save children with this money, but instead we're going to promote a film about a fictionalized tale where we save children because that does something in the world for someone. So that leads us to Timmy and Paul. Two things that I would say that they have in common, amongst others, is one, they're both terrified of being irrelevant, and two, they chase fame and legacy under the guise of philanthropy. That's most of what you need to know about these two bros.
Paul Hutchinson right now has a YouTube channel and a podcast, Saving Humanity or something like that, tells stories about himself and tries to raise awareness for those issues. That's up today. It hasn't been taken down. Liberating Humanity podcast. So he's branding himself as a protector of women and children and an anti-human trafficking, anti-sex slavery, anti-sexual assault person. Meanwhile, his own wife is guilty, we can now say definitively, is guilty of exploiting sexually minors. That's the hypocrisy. I mean, yeah, if that was me, that would be a huge embarrassment that I'm out there promoting this podcast and this YouTube channel, promoting myself.
That's why they don't want us to make this podcast right now.
I mean, it's so embarrassing, but it just shows to you it's a window into the delusion that he has, that he still thinks he can be viewed as a savior of women and children and a moral crusader against the sexual exploitation of children, while in his own home with his own wife, that is happening.
It's because Paul Hutchinson and Tim Ballard are birds of the same feather that they will never admit that they are terrified of being irrelevant. Because everything that they do, they have to exaggerate their missions.
And to make sure that we're not representing things, Paul has broke with Tim, and he has come out in public opposition to Tim, calling him a narcissist and seeking fame and money. So all of that has happened, and we can't ascribe the crimes of his wife to him personally, but there's a lot more to the story and a lot more background to who this wife is. And so if anything, it's guilt by association, both with Tim, Paul, and Rosio, his wife, but not guilt directly. So I just want to make sure that that's clear, and we're not making accusations against somebody that is not guilty of a crime as far as we know. But there's more to the story, so I digress.
Sourcing this story from Lynn Packer, the journalist who has reported on this for years and years, I am citing a story that he has posted online, and I will link to down below. And this is one section of a much longer tale, but this is the portion that you need to know that's relevant today.
Yeah, it's a great report. I think it was issued in 2017, so he is way ahead of the curve on all this. And
totally.
Yeah, if you want to dive even deeper down this rabbit hole, go read Lynn Packer's work.
Yeah. So here we go, jumping in. So it's 2015, and Paul Hutchinson, Operation Underground Railroad backer accused of touching young child sex slaves, is meeting Jenica Smith, a Draper woman, to hash out a visitation dispute. Paul Hutchinson, pictured over there. Jenica is the blonde woman. Paul probably thought he could charm his way through this meeting, but Jenica had other plans. Hidden in her bra was an audio recorder ready to catch Paul in his full, unfiltered glory. What followed was less a legal negotiation and more a wild confession session. Paul talked about his close friend, Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes, his struggles with pornography, meaning his struggles with hardcore pornography, and some reports also indicate things all the way down to child exploitation materials because regular stuff just didn't do it for him anymore. And that him and his wife, Rosio at the time, that's the kind of stuff they were into, allegedly. So Paul, at this time, has taken on helping to raise Rosio's 2 kids from her marriage to Aaron Smith. Aaron Smith is now married to Jenica Smith.
So Aaron and Rosio split. Aaron joined with Jenica, and Paul joined with Rosio, and they're in a custody dispute.
Exactly.
So she's
Rosio
getting dirt on Paul, Jenica.
Right. So Jenica has this secret bra recording, and that did not resolve the custody dispute because it just gave them more powerful pieces of evidence to actually use when trying to get out this custody battle. During this conversation, Paul justified his porn addiction and multiple mistresses, claiming these experiences helped him think like the traffickers he was supposedly rescuing children from. And if that's not a red flag, okay. And at one point, Paul alleges threatening Jenica and says, if you go to court, Aaron's visitation will be limited indefinitely, but if you let me handle things, you'll get your full visits back. Knowing that he's been got and trying to do some kind of power play by taking away Aaron's visitation rights when he confessed too much.
Yeah, red flags. It's just red flags. I think he's probably defend himself as a reformed person that now wants to be one of the good guys, helping kids, helping sex trafficked people. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. I don't know. We'll let you decide. But the backstory is important. This is important to see where he's come from.
So yes, the background is that she met Aaron Smith while he was serving his Mormon mission in Peru. And then they got married. And then 5 months in, Rosio confessed that she lied about her past, allegedly, and she said that she'd been sexually involved with like diplomats before their marriage. And then despite him learning this new information about his like new Mormon bride, they stayed together and they had 2 sons. Okay. They had 2 sons together. All right. This is where I have to get, I don't want to say this. And then it comes to light that she had been doing some other disgusting things, perhaps with her children, some very disturbing things. Trigger warning before I read this. So Aaron claimed
this is from court documents of the custody dispute. Is that right? That's where this information is coming from?
Right. This is Lynn Packer's reporting put into more easy to understand, quick word jumble here from the court reporting of what
Okay.
the line by lines of what happened. So Aaron claimed Rosio sexually abused their sons, forcing one of them to put his tongue in her vagina and teaching both boys to masturbate. That is also something I have heard, not just through this, something I had already heard from other people who are close to the case. Just wanted to add that. But if that's true, extremely disturbing. The fact that
What the heck is, you know what? This over, I don't even know if I can say the word, but this over sexualization of children has got to freaking stop. This is disgusting. Why can't we just allow kids to be kids? Just allow children to be children. That's it. Let's keep going. I can't.
Now, this is many years ago, back in the early 2010s. Now we're at 2025, and this woman thrown in jail for up to 15 years for actually doing things along those lines. So,
so it confirms confirms that those allegations in custody dispute have some merit because of the conviction she just got for abusing.
Pretty scary.
That 14-year-old boy recently.
Unfortunately, as custody disputes go, one person says one thing, one person says something back. So Rosio countered with her own allegations of abuse against her ex, Aaron. And then in 2012, a judge ruled against Aaron, granting custody to Rosio and limited supervision visitation to Aaron and Jenica. It gets even sadder. So the judge dismissed Rosio's history of multiple sexual partners and like a permissive lifestyle and all of these audio tapes and all of the dirt that Jenica and Aaron had, all of that, stating that it didn't make her morally unfit and that she speculated that the boys' sexual knowledge likely just came from accidental exposure to Rosio's adult activities. Like, literally the judge is saying stuff like, well, maybe they just like walked in on her having sex with somebody else, like stuff like that. So she gives this yikes explanation, and then the Smiths are furious with the judge.
Oh, so now we're trying to say we don't know how to lock the doors? Click, clack. We don't know how to lock the doors. Kids just walking in. That's what we're going to blame it on. You know what? Keep going.
Judges' rulings, and they filed complaints with the Utah Judicial Conduct Commission. And then those claims did absolutely nothing. And then eventually, the judge actually recused herself, but then the decision remained intact. So this enters in Paul Hutchinson and Tim Ballard. And as Rosio cozied up to Paul, her live-in boyfriend at the time, the Smiths grew increasingly desperate. And so they approached Tim Ballard at an O.U.R event, asking Tim to intervene. And the problem was, though, that Tim saw these complaints of just trying to get custody and trying to get this dangerous person away from the children. Tim saw their complaints about Rosio and Paul Hutchinson as threats to O.U.R.'s reputation. And then he has this sworn statement where Tim Ballard says that Jenica had threatened to go public with damaging information, including allegations about Paul's behavior with children during operations, and that Jenica didn't back down. And so she took to social media, airing out all of these details in the custody battle that's supposed to just be between those two. And so Tim Ballard is all upset that this looks like some kind of like smear campaign with his buddies at O.U.R. So he shuts the entire thing down. And then her posts caught a lot of attention, though, to O.U.R. donors who began questioning the support. And according to Tim Ballard, Jenica's actions jeopardized over $100,000 in donations and possibly affected the lives of children that O.U.R. was trying to save. Maybe all if these people were held accountable at the time that somebody brought something of evidence to the forefront. A lot of people have been coming forward with all kinds of problems with in O.U.R. And if that's going to affect a lot of people being saved, have better tactics, have better people within it, not people who go on in 2025 to literally be convicted and sentenced to being pedophiles. So that is the reputation that Tim Ballard was trying to save for himself at the cost of many children within this family that were abused.
Yeah. So this is so important. I hope you guys are making the connections that Kara's pointing out here, because what is emerging, the story is that Janica and Aaron are identifying Rosio is a pedophile. They're making accusations against Rosio and Paul Hutchinson that, are tied and part of O.U.R. And what does Tim and O.U.R. do? They attack Janica and Aaron for making those accusations, side with the now convicted pedophile to protect her and her reputation. And that's where we were at when this was going on. Now that air has been cleared, we know who Rosio is, a convicted pedophile. That's who Tim and O.U.R. were siding with, protecting, and trying to silence and discredit the very people that were outing the pedophiles. They're totally on the wrong side of this. They're totally backwards. Like it's shocking, but it's not. But that's what I'm seeing, and many other people are seeing with the case against Celeste and Sasha and Krista and all the women that have come out outing Tim as an abuser, alleging that he is a sexual predator. O.U.R. is now attacking those women, trying to discredit their testimony and siding again with the alleged abuser. So this is not like something new. What we're seeing is the emergence of
new
pattern.
Mm-hmm.
That's important.
Total pattern. All these people that have reputations and God complexes, and they just fear being obscure, and they want to have this legacy that goes down in history without actually doing any of the work that it takes to have a good legacy. They're storytellers, they're narrative makers. But at the end of the day, these things are always going to come to the light.
This is the beginning of the emergence of a pattern for O.U.R., for Tim, protecting the pedophiles. For sure, it's not an alleged pedophile anymore. Rosio is a pedophile, and siding with the perpetrator, protecting the perpetrator. And I know, like, a lot of fans of Tim Ballard and O.U.R., it's like that doesn't compute in their minds, because they're the organization that are the righteous crusaders against pedophilia, against sexual exploitation of minors. And so there's no way that they could be guilty of such things. And I understand why you think that, because it's opposite town. It's opposite world. But the more and more information comes out, the more and more that seems to be the case. And I think it makes sense to me, because it's the perfect alibi for people that want to have access to kids and prostitutes and sex parties and things like that to join O.U.R. and have an alibi for why they are grabbing the breasts of an underage woman on camera, things like that. So, it's disturbing.
Yeah, there's corruption that exists in all kinds of fields. You put your faith in like a police force. They're not supposed to be confiscating the evidence and snorting the coke, but like this type of corruption by the supposed good guys, people amass enough power. Is it ever happened that they just don't abuse it? So yeah, it's the perfect cover. Absolutely right. This is setting out a pattern, and I hope that they bring this up in court by saying this is the waters that Tim Ballard was swimming in. These are the type of people. This is the den of pedophiles that O.U.R. raised. This was who their ranks were. This is what people put up with. Is it that far of a stretch to think that Tim Ballard could also rape and abuse and spiritually manipulate X, Y, and Z, all of these things with these women? Just the tip of the iceberg of the rabbit hole of all rabbit holes of deceit and abuse and money laundering and X, Y, and Z thing that I can't say because I would need to put 15 trigger warnings before I start rambling off with the list of all the other things. Tip of the iceberg. Too bad we're the only ones talking about it right now.
Yeah.
Well, throughout this whole debacle, there's just mountains of evidence to me that Tim and Paul had a fear of losing control and being exposed. And controlling, the success of the missions, basically to Tim boils down to, can you keep a secret about how we're doing this? And then that leads me to just the God complex within Mormonism, within these types of structures, within Timmy and Paul, that they are after rescuing their relevance and actually not people. They both crave a sense of adoration when we can see that their rescue missions are actually just them manufacturing their own hero arcs. And I'm not saying that human trafficking isn't real. It's a totally horrifying issue, because it is. But we've also got to talk about the fear tactics and misinformation people like Tim Ballard and Paul Hutchinson spread. And then when you really look at what they're doing, it's not that hard to figure out, like God complex wise. It's like, I wonder where these Mormon guys who believe they get to be polygamous gods one day are getting a silly little complex like this from. So while I will state that Paul Hutchinson was excommunicated from the Mormon Church, that's what has been related to me. Seems like Tim Ballard was also excommunicated from the Mormon Church. But overall, they have different beliefs about Mormonism right now. But when we're talking about a culture that they're steeped in, that they were raised in, that's a culture of fear. And whether it's Mormonism or like the God of the Bible that we're talking about, I would still say that fear is the biggest motivator. And if the Bible is all about threats of hellfire and eternal punishment if you step out of line, then Mormonism.
Oh, so they were Mormons. Okay, well, we should have led with that. That explains the Utah connection, because I was going to actually say, like, I've heard a lot of stuff coming out of Utah with children being inappropriate with children. And, just a thought, maybe Utah needs to be investigated a little bit, closer. But, that's just me. We'll keep going.
Adds in its own stuff with like the endless warnings about failing to live up to your divine potential and not being able to be with your family forever. Like literally becoming a god is on the line. So it's high stakes. And then Tim and Paul are running that same playbook where, yes, like these stakes could not be any higher when it's eternal salvation, exaltation, and salvation from the hands of traffickers for children. And that they've made trafficking this massive, exaggerated boogeyman and used it to convince people that if you're not supporting them, that you are therefore part of the problem. You are stopping them from achieving the greatness that Mormonism set them up to achieve. Because in Mormonism, men are taught that they are destined for greatness and that they literally become gods one day. So Mormons refer to themselves, like as gods in embryo. So with that being said, gods demand worship. They lay down the laws. They punish anyone who steps out of line. Can we say Tim Ballard or Paul Hutchinson act any different as they behave like little baby kings? That they portray themselves as the only ones who can truly save these kids, while everyone else, governments, other nonprofits, experts, they just don't get it. It's all about control and being the center of attention. Mormon God, he is all about doing things his way, no matter what kind of collateral damage is caused and how much it rubs off on his followers. I would say that Tim has such a God complex that when the couple's ruse stopped working, when that manipulative tactic Tim Ballard used to con women into being naked with him, when that stopped working for this ketamine, balls-tripping, bloated alcoholic, his next plan of attack was to summon a global flood high enough so that he could say that he finally made a woman's panties wet. What's your little tidbit that you are saving for the end?
All right. Obviously, we're upset and we're angry about this, and I'm sure a lot of you are as well, and that's understandable. You got to be in the angry space. But we're going to leave you, and I've been on a good note. So I was on the phone with a friend and an acquaintance of mine that wants to remain anonymous, that has very close knowledge to the situation and what's going on. She didn't say specifically that this is part of the investigations into Tim Ballard, but what was relayed to me is that this is both horrible and encouraging at the same time. What was relayed to me is that the 7 women that have come forward in the original press conference, with those allegations back in September of last year, it really is just a tip of the iceberg. And that there is actually 32 women who have come forward.
Whoa.
There's the list of women who have sexual assault or sexual misconduct allegations against Tim Ballard is at 32.
The number of women who have sexual abuse allegations against Tim Ballard is, I just thought we couldn't beat Joseph Smith's record, but wow, just wow.
32. I know. And that is absolutely horrific. I am so appalled and so disgusted that Tim Ballard has had that kind of effect, potentially, allegedly, on that many women. But what it means is he's not getting away with this. O.U.R. is not
going to be
getting away
buried.
with this. Like, they can go after Celeste. They can, like, even if they're successful at any of these frivolous lawsuits, or if Tim is successful as a defamation case against Amy or Krista or Sasha or any of the women, they got a whole backlog of other testimonies they're going to have to deal with, up to the tune of probably 32. Now, it was also relayed to me that these women are not coming forward publicly because of Tim's tactics have been sort of effective. He's suing the original women who came forward for defamation. I don't believe it's because he thinks he can win. I don't think there's any chance of that he can win those defamation lawsuits, but it sends a signal and a message to anybody else on his long list, his potential allegedly long list of victims, to keep silent, or he'll come after them as well. And and if you think about it, with these women that were put in vulnerable situations and were taken advantage of, if the details of that come to light, it can be very, very disruptive to their family, to their husbands or boyfriends, to their reputation. And I know that Amy has been like sick about Amy Davis about, the potential hits to her reputation, which aren't going to be there because Tim's going to go down and she's going to come out on the victor side of this as one of the heroes that took him out. That's my prediction. Anyways, but it's a scary, unpredictable world for these sexual encounters to be published to the whole world.
Sure, you want to forget it, and it's hard to have your name Googleable and your face come up and be tied to this forever.
Yeah, and so I don't blame anybody for wanting to remain anonymous, and this is why sexual assaults, we've been beating this drum this whole time. This is why sexual assaults and sexual allegations rarely get prosecuted. They don't even get reported. I think the statistical stats that I've seen are like 90% of actual assaults don't get reported because it can be very disruptive to the lives of the women that,
of course,
that report them. And I understand
re-traumatizing yourself 100%.
But that doesn't mean that they're not talking to investigators. I mean, the open investigations, the criminal investigations that I believe are happening right now, they are probably talking to them. I'm not sure where that number 32 comes from. It comes from somebody that has more knowledge than me about the situation and somebody that I trust. So it's a rumor at this point. All I can say is it's a rumor, but I believe the source is credible and has personal firsthand knowledge of the situation. So we've been saying,
we'll see.
Yeah, we've been saying this is likely the tip of the iceberg, and that just confirms it to me. So as disheartening that is, it also shows that there's an army of women standing behind the original 7 women who have come forward, and they're not fighting this battle alone. So that's what's encouraging. That's what's really encouraging to me.
Yeah, because these are battle lines. Like, this feels like war. We'll be here at the Timmy Did What podcast reporting on everything that we can to support you guys. So we're proud of anyone who comes forward to do anything that they can in their sphere to hold people accountable. So, wow.
Yeah, wow. And if anybody wants to share a story, come forward and not participate in investigations or any of the lawsuits, we're a landing place for that too. We'd love to talk to you. and give you some validation and support for the traumatic situation you may have gone through. So yeah, let's help you out there also.
Thanks for those kind words, Ryan. I guess that's going to wrap up most of our episode today. Articles and breakdown of the things that I shared today. I will link those all down below and then show notes for you guys, as well as you can just bump into the links for our donor box or our Venmo or our Patreon. So just bumble around and land yourself over there where you can donate some money to help this podcast keep going. But if you can't.
So, okay. So basically, there we have it. There's more of them, and they're up here pretending like they're not, and they're supporting ones that are, and just a bunch of wolves in sheep's clothing. Yes, that's what it is. Wolves in sheep's clothing, and we've got to watch out for everyone. We just got to keep our eye out and be vigilant, because you just don't know. You just don't know. Hey Murph, what's going on?
You are, my love. How you doing, sister?
I'm doing all right, but let me go ahead and end this for Tahir, and then we can get into the next one. So with that being said, guys, let me know what you think in the comments. Take it light, take it slow. Tell them Uncle Mike, and I'm just saying BB told you so. See you later.